All right, everybody. I just want to do a little disclaimer before we get into the episode here. So if you remember a while back, in the early days of the show, Brandon went through a procedure to get all of his teeth removed,
Oh
and
yeah.
I think it's episode 3 or something like that. It's sports movies. And there's just been a few complications with the procedure a year in. Um, so he's taking, it's sore in his mouth right now, so he's taking some time off to heal from the infections in his gums, all of his gums, because he got all of his teeth removed. A lot of holes with a lot of, he's a sucker for candy. We all know Brandon, he's a candy man. Um, but he just got to heal those holes with all those, with all those infections in it. So if you can, when you're hearing this message, he's probably still gonna be healing by now. Just tweet out, just wish him better, wish him well, um, because I know he could use it. Um, so yeah, but with that, replacing Brandon this week, is our good friend Joey Jordan. He's coming at us live
Hey.
from a Foley booth. That's how well prepared he was. He's probably gonna sound better than the both of us this episode. Uh, Joey,
Probably,
welcome back to
honestly.
the show, man. For the new format, you're welcome. You're back in for the new format. Welcome to the show.
I've never been happier that Brandon isn't feeling well, so that means I get to go on Stacked.
It's
So
true.
Brandon, thank you for, taking one for the team and sitting this one out because now I get to take your spot. And I love talking movies. I'm excited to be here.
That's right. Chris, of course, is with us as always.
Hey guys.
This is gonna be a fun episode. I think we're gonna have a fun time. We have we've never done a guest in this new show format. It's gonna be a lot more free flowing. So this week, for Stacked episode 104, I should say, welcome back to Stacked episode 104. I know we've been taking some breaks and some after hours, but now we're back to the regular format of the show. Um, this weekend, we're celebrating the release of Creed 3, highly anticipated film about boxing and fighting. So we're going to be breaking down what we believe are the best fights in all of cinema. And I wanted to leave that topic as broad as possible because a fight could be anything, you know? It just means there's got to be a conflict, scenes with conflict between two or more parties, um, so, but before I get into that, it wouldn't be an episode about fights if I didn't start a fight on this episode first. Joey, you've
Hmm.
uh you've been watching the Rocky movies.
I have, and that's why it's
Oh
actually
yeah.
perfect timing that I'm here. I'm literally right in the middle of going through all of them.
Uh, but you just watched Rocky 5, and I I I I got a bone to pick with some of it, with
I
the rating.
totally saw this coming. I knew that this was going to be brought up. Let me have it.
Rocky 5 is a crime against humanity, in my opinion. An absolute crime against humanity. And for someone to give that film the same amount of stars on Letterboxd as a film that handedly ended the Cold War seems a bit absurd to me. So I just want to hear it from you, your thoughts on Rocky 5. Convince me that this is a 3-star movie cuz I'm all ears. I just don't understand.
Listen. Rocky 5 is honestly such a breath of fresh air for the franchise in my opinion. It totally breaks the formula. It does something new. It has Rocky return to his roots on the streets of Philadelphia, which is honestly a setting I've been missing a lot in Rocky 3 and Rocky 4. He moves into his giant mansion and it just there's a texture that's not there that you got with the first two Rocky films. And I personally really loved seeing him kind of get humbled in that way. And I think it's such an interesting idea. So for anyone who doesn't know, in Rocky 5, he meets a young new boxer and starts training him, and while he's training him, he starts neglecting his own son. And I think it's just such an interesting idea about this guy who literally doesn't know how to live his life any other way than through boxing, trying to live vicariously through this younger boxer in order to hold on to his past. I think that's such an interesting idea. And it all culminates to probably one of the most unique end fights of the franchise. And
Street
this is a
fight.
spoiler. It's a street fight. That is so freaking cool. And they like ham it up so well. He sees like the ghost of Mickey, like telling him to get up, you bum, get up, you bum. And like it's so cinematic. And listen, this is coming, like, I need to make it clear. Rocky 5 has so many issues. I recognize those issues. It is lower tier Rocky. It sounds like I love this movie. I do not.
You love this
However,
movie.
Ethan was hyping up how bad Rocky 5
It's
is. So I was
horrible.
expecting a train wreck. And I had fun. Justin was even kind of half watching it with me, and he was agreeing with me. Like, it's not that
Little-
bad. And at that point in the franchise, after Rocky literally ends the Cold War, like, I'm sorry, but like, I can handle a little stupidity by Rocky 5. Like, I by that point, I'm not expecting the same grounded nature that the first two have. So, I don't know. I didn't hate it. I thought it was fine. I thought it was a unique story. It did something new. So yeah, I'm a Rocky 5 defender. That I'll
Alright.
say it.
All right. Well, I respect your opinion. It's a bold stance, you know, and I love boldness when it comes to film takes. I just can't see it. Just can't see it. I hate his. I hate his son's fucking earring. I hate Tommy Gunn. Fucking, oh,
Tommy, you're supposed to. He's the
I-
bad guy.
I know, but
He's this cocky young boxer that at the end Rocky has to put in his place.
You're supposed to love to hate him. I fucking hate him. I just think he's horrible. I think he's a horrible villain. The Duke, I hate him too. I actually like the Duke. I think the best
the
part
Duke gets
is
knocked out so early though. He's nothing. He's barely anything.
I do like my favorite part of Rocky 5 is when he goes back to Philadelphia and the scene, like, I will agree with you, like when you go back to the streets, that feels nice. And
It
they're playing
feels like he's
they're
back.
playing like this hip hop remix of Take It Back.
Yes.
Do. Okay, that is the only good scene in that movie. I
And
can't
Rocky
deal with
has-
his
He has his leather jacket back. He has the hat. Like it feels like a return to form for the character who I think loses some of his relatability in Rocky 3 and Rocky 4. So I don't know. As a Rocky story alone, like focusing on the character, I think Rocky 5 is perfectly fine. Is it like, does that like excuse the entire movie? No. Paulie is an absolute like clusterfuck
he
of a
fucks
character.
him over. He sells
He
off
fucks
his
him
shit.
over, but they don't like punish him in
They
any
don't
way. He
punish
has
him at all.
no service to the story other than to be this bumbling idiot. The robot's gone, which why not keep the robot around? I don't
Seriously.
know. But I don't know. I thought it was fine. I had fun with it. But that's just me, I guess. To each their own.
Well, it's a unique stance, and I respect it. I respect your integrity, Joey. Chris, you've only seen the Creed films, right?
No. First Rocky,
Yeah.
Rocky, all Creed. That's it. I
Alright.
don't know a damn thing. When you guys are like, this guy ended the Cold War. I don't know if like you guys are being literal or
No,
like,
he
literal
literally
in-universe.
ends
Literally
the
ends it.
Cold
In
War.
real life,
he
too. When
converts
this
the
movie came
Russian
out.
people against communism and has them turn against their own country.
Yeah,
nice.
it's just it's great American cinema.
Wait, so does that? I wonder, does that carry over to? So in this version of the world, like Russia has gone capitalist by the end of the movie. Is that the idea?
It's
maybe.
they turn against Drago, who is the Russian boxer who's challenging Rocky, and they start becoming fans of Rocky. So it is implied that they no longer support their own country. Rocky is just so inspiring that they start rooting for America. And at the end, he's like, everyone can change. We can all change. So that implies that like the Soviet Union can change. So
Yeah,
As they did.
as
kind
they
of.
did.
As
And that's
they
what I'm
did.
saying. It ended. The Soviet Union ended when this movie came out. So I'm just saying he also ended it in the real world too. Just saying. It changed.
pretty incredible.
probably one of the most significant films ever made, because you can't really say, you can't really point to any other movie that had toppled over an empire, a whole, you know, a whole government system like Rocky IV.
It is true.
Just
It is
saying.
true. It should be taught in history classes.
It honestly should. Thank you for bringing that up.
Wait,
It honestly
actually,
should.
no, we did watch scenes from it in my A-push class in high school.
Are you serious?
Yeah, in my U.S. history class in high school, my teacher showed us like the montage showing how Drago is trained in a lab. He's a cheater. He's like a robot. But Rocky's this honest American who does things like the real way. So yeah, I literally was taught in my history class. Not actually, like we were able to laugh at it. But yes, it was brought up in my U.S. history class.
Laugh at it. What? All right.
How do you... Okay, whatever. Get over yourself.
Before I get angrier, let's get on to the show.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're talking about fights. Does anybody... Okay, let's start with the most traditional definition of when someone thinks of a movie fight, I think we got to start with a film that has just great spectacle, great choreography, and Chris, I want to kick this off with, I think, one that we're both going to have. I think this film just has some of the greatest fight choreography and action I've ever seen. I want to start with Police Story as our first film with the best fights. Because,
there you go.
Okay, before I start, Brandon gave us a list of films that he would shout out. He gave me like 20 films. I'll list them all at the end, but one notable omission from this that Chris pointed out was there's no Police Story. And so I think we need to start this episode off by giving Police Story the credit it deserves, because it is phenomenal. Because you can actually tell, like, it's honestly, I have such a respect for fight choreography. It's hard. It's like just as hard as like the most advanced ballet.
Mm-hmm.
It's an art. Like planning out a fight scene from a directorial in a standpoint, from a cinematographer's standpoint, and then from a choreographer's standpoint. That it is one of the hardest things I think you can ever do on film, and the way they handle it in Police Story is insane. Like they're smashing motorcycles into each other, hitting each other. You can feel the hits in this movie. They're running through glass. Jackie Chan's actually getting hurt in this movie. And just the way they block this. I'm specifically talking about the end scene at the mall. Joey, you've seen Police Story, right?
I have, because it was brought up when I was on for the 80s episode, and I hadn't seen it. And then, like, a year after we did that episode, I went back and was like, okay, I need to watch some of these that I hadn't seen, and Police Story was on there. So I can now have a stance on it. So yes, I can discuss this film.
What do you think about that mall action sequence?
It's incredible because, and for a lot of reasons, some that are actually right and for proper safety, like you don't see action films outside of like Tom Cruise where the actors themselves are doing their own stunts, and you don't get that visceral feel of seeing someone like Jackie Chan do all of this for real. Now, insurance plays into it, safety plays into it. Like, I understand why there is a stunt department, and I think stunt people I think they should honestly get their own Oscar category. I think it's absolutely
choreography. I don't know why they don't have it yet.
It's absolute bullshit that there isn't an Oscar category, because SAG has a category. SAG has an award for stunts, and I think the Oscars should be in suit. But it is very nice to see a movie star like Jackie Chan do all these crazy stunts, like when he's sliding down the lights
to watch.
And like all the sparks coming off, and it's like, even with the way with all the cameras set up, you could just tell like they were able to get so much more coverage of that, because you could see his face. They didn't have to worry about hiding his face in any way or like cutting too much. Like it's just such a cool thing to see. and it's just really refreshing. And Jackie Chan like always blows me away. Like every time I check out a new film of his, I'm never disappointed. He always delivers.
Yeah. Chris, you're the Jackie Chan expert here. You basically, you shared Police Story when we talked about A's episodes. You showed it to me, and Brandon was blown away by it. I know you're a big fan of this scene, so get into it.
So yeah, I mean, like this scene is like, I mean, the whole mall sequence is, I mean, it's the finale of Police Story 1. Police Story 2 is literally just a continuation of the same story, because they're effectively the same movie. But yeah, like this sequence is just phenomenal. I mean, down to having like the fight sequence, like honestly, like the sliding pole thing isn't even my favorite part of that whole thing. For me, it's just him fighting. All of it, just throwing themselves over furniture, through glass, everything. It's crazy. And yeah, I mean, like that grand finale to that sequence where he slides down that pole. I mean, like I was reading, like this guy, like he broke a couple ribs, hurt a vertebrae when he did it, and second-degree burns on his hands. And it's just like, dude, like how the hell do you do this for a living? And he directed this movie.
Yeah.
And like, and like Joey said, nowadays, save for Tom Cruise, like it's very, very rare that actors perform their own stunts, because like we have people now who are more specially trained and capable of doing that safely and whatnot, and full support of that, absolutely, obviously. But like the thing about Hong Kong cinema at the time is that, and I don't know if this is the case now, but I know at the time at least, the expectation in Hong Kong isn't that you will ever get a stunt double. Like if you sign on for the project, you're on for all of it, right. Like down to every shot. So that's just kind of like the way it went at the time. I would like to believe that nowadays, they have like more capability to, incorporate body doubles and stunt doubles and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, at the time it was just like that. I mean, like one of my favorite parts of this movie is, I mean, we're talking fights on this episode, but like just to throw this in there, like there's a scene where Jackie is chasing after a bus, and he uses an umbrella to fish him, like to hook himself on and climb in. That the only piece of safety that he had on that stunt was that the umbrella wasn't made of wood; it was made of metal. No harness, nothing. The guy could have that guy could have gotten like he could have been like a skid mark on the ground.
Yeah, could have just been a stain on the road.
Yeah, but like guy knows what he's doing. He's survived. Got hurt a lot. Don't get me wrong, but
he's still up and at
he's hanging in there. I mean, he's obviously, as he's aged, he's not as spry as he once was, but guy, don't doubt him. The guy can still move. So
wait.
Yeah, special appearance. It's a special appearance time.
He's probably not going to talk, but Brandon
he actually might not talk. Brandon has joined the party, everybody.
Brandon is here.
Oh, and Evelyn. And Evelyn. Hey, they're calling in. They're calling in from the hospital. The dentist. Brandon's procedure is going well.
He can't speak at all, actually.
Not even a little bit?
No, he's using the Google Translate. I love you.
Brandon, I told the listeners that that you're having problem with your gums because you got your teeth removed last year or many years ago, and I know that you're having a tough time healing from that. So they're gonna wish you well, and hope those teeth implants come in well. I know you can't talk right now, but if there's anything you want to say through Google,
so much OWWWW.
What?
So much OWWW.
So much OWWW.
Oh, it hurts. You're saying ow. Okay.
Ow, it hurts.
Yeah. Well, you're looking good, man.
Yeah. Drink lots of fluids.
Drink lots of fluids.
Warm fluids.
He's got, he got a nice haircut. He's
saying
good.
Goodbye.
Okay.
All right, take care. All right, he's gone.
There he goes.
Didn't say a word. Nice little appearance.
Yeah, hey, I'm glad he showed up.
Yeah, in a way, Joey is Brandon's stunt double on this one.
I am. I'm filling in.
Yeah,
I can do this. I can. If you need to beat me up, I'll take it. I'll take Brandon's hits.
What is he saying now? Hold on, he's texting us. Funny or no funny?
Funny.
Bunny.
Bunny.
Funny. I'd like to throw in a new movie in here. Into
Yeah,
this mix.
let's
We've all
take
seen
it
this
to another
one.
one.
I'm just gonna throw in the one that because we're going with the most direct version of what a fight is. I gotta throw in my probably my second or arguably right in contention with Police Story for best fight choreography I've ever seen. Justin will be very happy about this one. It's The Raid or The Raid Redemption if you're in the U.S. Wow, what a movie! For anyone who hasn't seen The Raid, it is an Indonesian film from I think early 2000s. And it is just fantastic. I mean, like it's a very simple. I mean, much like Police Story, the story. Funnily enough, even though Police Story is called Police Story, it's a kind of light on story. You know, you're kind of there for spectacle, and they know it. You know, and same for The Raid. The Raid story is pretty straightforward. It's a guy has a pregnant wife, and he gets sent on an assignment to infiltrate like a giant building with his squad of fellow police officers, and shit hits the fan. But like, and I know that sounds really boring, but trust me, get through the first 20 minutes of this movie, you're setting sail for one of the greatest action set pieces you'll ever see. The drug lab, the hallways, just down to the final fight in that room where like the torture is happening. It is a wild movie. The choreography is insane. These guys actually, for any Star Wars fans out there, you may recognize some of the guys in The Raid because they play Kanja Club in Force Awakens, which is very random, but it's so nice to see
Horribly
them.
misused.
Horribly misused. Why did they not fight?
They never
They just got
even
eaten
fought.
by a
They just showed
monster.
up. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's awful. That was awful. But if you're a Star Wars fan, maybe that's a little something for you. And these guys are very talented. Ethan, you like I mean, we all like The Raid, at least a little bit. Like, I don't think any of us dislike this movie. Anything you want to throw in there about this movie's fights?
The only thing I just want to throw in there, it goes back to Police Story when your star is actually like a professional at the choreography. The director and cinematography, they don't have to like cut around you, cut away from you. You know, it makes it just all the better because you can actually see that person's actually pulling off those moves, and it's great. I didn't say much in my review for it. I just said I said 2 certified cartoon coconut clonk sound effect movies in one night. I don't know what else. We watched The Conjuring 2. We did that, and
I remember this.
We did that and The Raid. It's a double feature. It's a
which was a bizarre pairing.
It was a really bizarre pairing, but they're both great movies. But yeah, I love movies set in a tower, except for Tower Heist. Now brand I'm not. But there's a leveling to it, you know, and I just love. It's like this could be considered like a video game movie because he's progressing through the floors, through the levels. It's, you know, Dread does a similar thing, and it's just like it keeps a pace with it. You know, when you know new floor, new setting, new opponents. It's just it always keeps you engaged, and the fights in this are absolutely awesome. They're Indonesian, right? I think this is an Indonesian film.
Indonesian film, yeah.
Awesome. Why were they?
So just like a corner of the world we don't really see in cinema much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even among like Southeast Asian countries, it's one of the ones that like, you know, you'd often think like, I mean, in Asia, like you would think Korea, Japan, China, what have you, India cinema. But then like sometimes you'll get like little sprinklings of like Indonesia, Thailand, whatever, and you know they're special too. They've all got their little things going on.
It's just crazy that everybody makes movies everywhere. You know?
Yeah, everyone likes movies.
There's hundreds of movies that come out of every country, which is crazy to think about. And we only like watch primarily one country's worth, and there's so much more good stuff. All right, Joey, what do you think about The Raid?
I'd like to shout out 2 factors of The Raid's fight scenes. And I think these 2 things are just as important to a good fight scene as the stunt people, who are obviously the stars of the show. And that is cinematography and production design. And those are 2 aspects of The Raid that I think are absolutely phenomenal. Just the design of because they're crashing through so many different apartments. They use the setting so freaking well within their fight choreography. And that's really what I think makes it stand out and makes it so visceral, is that you really believe in this setting and that the spontaneity of what they have to use in order to fight their opponents is you never see it coming. And I think not only that, so I have to give a shout out to the production design, because I think that is crucial to a good fight scene, is a good setting. But also the cinematography and the way it follows the action is just mesmerizing. And it just makes for a really fun watch. I remember when we watched this at Panther Village, which is where we used to watch a lot of movies. And it was the second film of a double feature with Conjuring 2. And I think I had like the least comfortable like spot in the room. So I remember I had like trouble engaging with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really tell you what the actual plot of that movie is, but those fight scenes, you remember the setting, you remember those fight scenes. And yeah, I think this is a great pick because it's just so memorable, and it's some of the best fight choreography out there. So yeah.
Perfect.
Really next level.
All right, Joey, let's have you shout out a film. What should we?
throw something
how
in
should
there.
we carry this conversation to?
I want to shout out a film that is not an action film.
Oh,
It is
yes.
not an
'Cause
not an
fight-
action film, but it
Very
is
broad.
It can be anywhere.
it is a traditional fight. So this is a movie called Top Secret, which is a spoof
Oh.
film by Zucker and Abrahams, the guys who did Airplane and the Naked Gun movies. And there's a scene in this film, and it's not all fight scenes. Like there's a few fight scenes here and there because it's a spoof on like Elvis films and like spy films from like the 60s. So there's
Yeah.
some action set pieces, but there's one sequence where Val Kilmer, who's the lead, is fighting his adversary, and they end up falling off a bridge into a body of water. And there's this whole fight scene that takes place completely underwater. And they have like this old fashioned like Western bar, like at the bottom of this like pond or whatever, complete with like a bartender who like takes a beer bottle and smashes it over the guy's head. And there's like gunfights and like guys playing poker. Like there's this whole saloon underwater. So they do this whole bar fight completely submerged underwater. And from what I can tell, it actually was Val Kilmer doing all of it, which is so.
Really?
And keep in mind, this is 1984, 1985. This is an impressive sequence. And if you go on Letterboxd and you see like any reviews on Top Secret, pretty much all of them in one way, shape, or form reference that underwater fight because it is so legendary. And I honestly think it's one of the best like comedy set pieces I've ever seen. And this is a movie I'm kind of lukewarm on, but
Yeah.
like it is hysterical and it's just such a clever way to do a fight scene. And it's also just impressive. It's completely submerged in water. I don't know how they pulled it off, but but it is awesome. So I just wanted to shout out that because I feel like that's one that's just not talked about enough.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard about this like infamous underwater fight scene, and I think that it's like it started like, well, I think there's actually like there's been a craze of like underwater karate. I think that was started in like 60s action films where people are like, this is so ridiculous. Why are they fighting under like doing underwater karate? You know, and I think that's where like this thing like totally capitalized on that to make a big joke out of it. But
Yeah.
I haven't seen Top Secret. I've seen clips from it. It seems really funny. I've seen the clip where like the guy gets pushed off something and he falls, and when he hits the ground he like shatters like a ceramic pot or
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Like, that killed me.
It's-
That's
it's
such
so-
good physical comedy.
It really is. And like they really don't make comedies like they used to anymore, where it's like you don't really see a whole lot of comedies with like that much physical humor anymore. And actually going back to Police Story, an aspect of Police Story that not enough people talk about is how funny that movie is.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
Jackie
Jackie's
Chan
hilarious.
is
Yeah,
there's
so funny.
sequences where there's no action and he's like the scene with all the phones where he's sitting around all these
Oh, yeah.
phones that are talking and he has to like juggle all these different phone calls and he's like trying to eat ramen at the same time. And it's just like he's such a good physical comedian and I feel like he doesn't get enough credit for that aspect of his performance because he's such a funny guy.
It's such like those silent comedies of the 20s and 30s, like
Yes.
completely foundational to action films, which is crazy
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
the shit you see Buster Keaton doing, like, in what's it? The general when he's on the train, you know, and all that stuff. Like, they had the most complex setups for just a train crash with Buster Keaton on it, and somehow he survives. And I'm just like, how the hell did they do that? Or Sherlock Jr. There's this scene where he's this car is speeding down the road, and he's just like goofing off on the car or something like that. And like I'm like, how is this man not dying from a car accident? It's not like rear projection car shots that they usually did back then. This is an actual car going down and
Yeah.
like shoots into a lake. And I'm just like, those early physical comedians, like they really did create like the groundwork for a lot of stunt work.
Yeah.
And it doesn't surprise me that like that comedy is going to come up in this, because there is like so many great fight scenes. Like I mean, not even in like terms of like just pure choreography, but like I can think of like so many great fight scenes in Monty Python, The Holy Grail,
Yeah.
like when he goes up against the Black Knight, it's not really a spectacle, but it's such a good fight scene because it's so funny, or
And they find a gag wherever they can get it, and
when
it's just
Lancelot, like when he storms the castle and kills everybody, that is just
Yeah.
hilarious. And yeah, it's like it's just good action can also be really funny.
hmm
What do you think about this, Chris? Do you have any takes on sort of like comedy and action?
I mean, like we always like. I think oftentimes we often talk about how like even as disparate of like genres as comedy and like horror are, there's a lot of interplay between them in terms of like what you have to do to make it compelling. And I think the same can be said about the interplay between comedy and action. I honestly think comedy is one of the hardest things to do, and when you can interplay that with something that is just as maybe arguably hard in a different way as action, there's something really special there. And speaking of the interplay between comedy and action,
Ooh,
um, I
so-
want to throw in a new one.
yeah.
do it.
I Ethan, I know you love this movie. I love this movie too. Joey, according to Letterboxd, you have not seen it. I would recommend this movie the hell out for you. I'm talking Stephen Chow's Kung Fu Hustle. Now that
Joey,
is
you
comedy.
haven't seen this film?
I have
You would
I
love-
haven't.
you would love
it.
You're
I
not the
can't-
first who's recommended it.
I can't believe I forgot Kung Fu Hustle. We absolutely have to talk about this. Go into it, Chris.
Okay, so Kung Fu Hustle is directed by this guy named Stephen Chow, who is a Hong Kong filmmaker. You may notice that Hong Kong comes up a lot in the conversations about action films because they were
Ahead of the game.
foundational in the 80s and 90s, ahead of the game at the time. Like by far, there was nobody doing it like they were at the time. But Stephen Chow is one of those directors, and Kung Fu Hustle is, I would probably say, his magnum opus, at least from what I've seen from him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this movie is fantastic. It's set in the 1940s and tells the story of a town ruled by this gang and people, and like there's someone who wants to be part of it, and that's a whole thing. There's a whole lot of that. But what really makes this movie worth talking about in this situation is the way in which Stephen Chow directs these action sequences, because they're the most absurdist thing you can think of. Like imagine like a Tom and Jerry like Roadrunner kind of approach
Straight up
to
Looney Tunes, but it works.
yeah, Looney Tunes vibes, but it works, and it's somehow serious enough that you can still be compelled by the plot.
Yeah.
But it's also like loose enough that you don't take it that seriously. Like when we say Looney Tunes, we're talking like the full 9 yards, like the full like when you're running around.
She
footage
literally
being
runs like the
accelerated.
Roadrunner, like that
Yeah,
old lady.
like,
I'm just like, what the
and then she
hell?
just
But it
pops on the
works.
screen. Yeah, but it's hilarious, and like that's the kind that like, and we were talking about like the interplay between action and comedy. It pretty much doesn't get better than this. I feel like this is such a fun movie, and like, I mean, just look at the poster. The guy's holding in one hand an axe and the other a lollipop.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's all you have
what more you need to know?
Oh, this is
Um,
the guy who did Shaolin Soccer.
Yes.
Shaolin
Which is
Soccer.
also
Okay,
such a good
I've
action.
seen
Which is also
I've
so fun.
seen that one years ago, but like if it's a similar vibe to that, then I think I'd be into it.
Dude, it's
Oh,
Shaolin Soccer, but like on a higher level. Like
I think it's at a higher level too.
it's
Oh, I'm
It's
I'm
so good.
excited.
and like just the way he like the Matrix wishes it was like this. I can totally
Mhm.
tell. Like I think the Matrix has great action. I think that's something we could have talked about. Especially
Yeah.
the first Matrix movie because it was pretty revolutionary. But I think Shaolin Soccer came out in like 2005 or something. Stephen Chow like takes what the Wachowski sisters were doing in the Matrix and just like cranks it up to an 11, you know, where
Mhm.
you know, you see the main character of Kung Fu Hustle sort of just taking on hordes of guys, you know, just like how Neo was with Agent Smith, you know. And but it's like it's so much better because it's like it's so engaging, it's so energetic, it's so funny. This was a great pick, Chris.
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
I think I can segue this into another like section of action and fighting in cinema, and that's sort of like how to create a good action sequence in animation.
I'm
I
glad
think
someone's bringing this up. Yeah.
I think animation, you know, because the animated medium, you have complete control of the frame, you know. So, but also creating action and animation is hard as hell because you got to think about frame rate, movement, all of
Mhm.
that coming together to create impact, create fluidity, to create clearness, you know. So there's a lot of films that I could shout out. The newest Puss in Boots movie, I think, has great action.
Oh my god,
Um,
yeah. The new Puss in Boots honestly is like it's one of my favorite films from last year.
it
I
was
think it's phenomenal. Oh my
my
gosh.
my favorite part of that movie was the action. Of course, the
So well done.
Spider-Verse movies, which sort of I think created like led the way to
It,
you know, Puss in Boots in terms of
yep.
like animators realizing that you don't have to really make your animation like so like smooth and fluid for it to be believable. Like sometimes
Yeah.
when you cut back frame rates, they realize they're starting to like it's cool to see that people who grew up with anime sort of are realizing how to make like really great action. Speaking of anime, that's what I'm going to get into. There's two films where I think have had the greatest action fights I've ever seen. I'll shout out one, the Cowboy Bebop movie. I know none of you two have seen it, so I'm not going to really go into that one. But that has insane action. But I'm going to talk about uh, End of Evangelion, where Asuka is fighting the Eva series. That is one of the most insanely good fights I've ever seen in my life because it's like it's unlike Puss in Boots and Spider-Verse, the animation is fluid. You know, you feel the weight of these giant mechs fighting each other. You can feel Asuka lugging it around as she's throwing herself through the catapult and screaming. The choreography of the fight, the sword play, and like ripping them to shreds. I remember when I first saw it, like there's great fights in the Evangelion series, but that one, like, it blew me away because I mean it was Eva fights but with the cinematic budget, you know, and it's one of the most unforgettable sequences to me because you can feel how hard it is on the character fighting, and to do that in animation is insane. Um, this is my favorite film of all time, obviously, but I just like this is just one of the many reasons why I love it so much because it tells such an insanely good story, but also has like this really good fight to kick it off. Both of you guys have seen this movie, and I know both of you are blown away by it. So what do you think of this fight? It's crazy, right?
It what you just said, where that is what essentially sets us off into this film. And you could tell immediately the difference between how this story looks on a television medium versus a cinematic medium.
Oh yeah.
Instantly, you could tell that the animators had a lot more resources at their disposal. They had more time to plan things out. And it's pretty unbelievable and it's pretty breathtaking. It's honestly night and day.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think like that show is just one of the best things about that show is just the attention to details in the angels and in the mech suits. They feel so real and they feel so distinct. I think one of my criticisms of arguably a movie and a franchise, I guess, that took a lot of inspiration is Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro's Pacific Rim. And one of my biggest criticisms of those films is that when you take away the hand-drawn animation and it becomes just these CG giants, if anything, even though it's meant to be more realistic, there's something you miss. There's something about seeing these two forces come together. Like in the 2D animation that you see in End of Eva, is you can see where these two characters contact. You can see it because of that hand-drawn animation. You can see, and they accentuate the blows so much, which is so cool. And I think 2D animation, even more so than in some cases 3D and live action with CG, just allows you for more creative freedom. And like you brought up Puss in Boots and Spider-Verse, how those films, who even though they're still technically 3D animation, they are now reverting back to 2D practices because it allows them more creative freedom within their action sequences.
Yeah.
So like playing with the frame rate, like you can hold on certain images, and Eva does this all the time, where if there's a big blow, they'll let you look at that blow for a good second or two. They'll hold on that frame, and it's just so beautiful, and it's just so well animated. And to be honest, and this isn't a dig at the movie, it's actually a compliment, but I forgot about that action sequence because everything that follows that is some of the biggest mind
That
fuckery
movie's a lot.
that I've ever seen. So it will absolutely, that sequence, while amazing, and it's so well done, and it's arguably the best fight of the series, it just after that, it's like only you haven't even gotten to. There's so much more that you think that sequence blows you away. Just wait what the rest of the movie has in store, because it's pretty incredible. But yeah, I would agree that sequence is truly breathtaking, and just really, I'm just glad that the animators got more time and more of a budget to be able to pull something like that off, because it really is great.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much for me to add to this conversation, like, because you guys nailed it. But I remember, like, what really stuck with me in terms of fighting in that whole thing was Asuka going up against the horde of angels, and like her scream. Spoiler alert for End of Eva. That scream still haunts me.
Greatest voice acting I've ever seen in my life is the voice actress for Asuka, and when the spear of Longus goes through her hand and into her eye.
Oh
and
God!
She scream. I have never heard a vocal performance be in that much pain. Oh my God!
It's so like, and like it has that kind of like personality to it where like it feels so genuine. You know, like that's the kind of scream like you would let out if you got stabbed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, oh my God, not phoned in at all. That might be one of the best screams in all of film. I got Scream Queen.
It's number one for me. But I also want to go back to Joey's point, which sort of blew my mind. When you're talking about 2D versus 3D fights, and you talk about the points of contact, like you're so right. When there's like when characters are like designed with sharp lines in 2D, like the sharpness of those lines clashing is so much more satisfying than something in 3D, because there's sort of like a weightlessness to a 3D polygon to a model like that, I do think the first Pacific Rim does a really great job of doing that, because I think Guillermo del Toro makes a really good choice of shooting most shots like from the ground up and making the mechs really slow and giving it lots of weight. But all of that is lost in the second Pacific Rim film. That film is horrible. It's like it's shot in the daytime and it's all from up above, and you're just like, I feel like I'm just like watching like a Power Rangers or like a mech video game or something. It's awful, and they're like moving fast and stuff. I'm like, no, that's not how you do it. But like when there is like sharp lines in 2D fights, like when those lines like intersect and clash, you can feel it,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a lot more material than something digital, because it's actually drawn, and yeah, that it was certainly carried over into Spider-Verse and Puss in Boots by the way they like design 3D models with 2D elements,
Mm-hmm.
like you can feel like they look drawn even though you can tell it's a 3D model, which I think just makes it work all the more. Which love that point. Okay. Anybody else want to segue this into another section of great fights?
I feel like pretty soon we're going to start getting into territory where we get a bit more abstract with the definition of fighting. So I want to
Absolutely.
I want to throw in one more straight action thing. There are
Yeah.
plenty more. Well, actually, I want to throw in two, but I'm gonna brief mention one because I don't want to talk this movie that much. Um, I think Matthew Vaughn is a really good action director.
Absolutely.
I don't know that much about. I don't. I really liked the first Kingsman. I don't know about the other ones for me
Yeah.
personally, but that first one really well done. I like the action choreography there. Good job. But the one I really want to talk about, I'm surprised we haven't brought this up yet. John Wick. Hello, Parabellum.
Yeah,
Anybody?
dude.
John Wick 3. Come on.
It's I was
It's
gonna
so good.
I was gonna shout it out. Joey, have you seen Parabellum? John Wick 3?
I've seen the first John Wick movie, and while enjoyable, I wasn't like, man, I need to see like 3 sequels.
You're in the same boat as Brandon, and I will say, when I watched it with him, he thought the same about the second. He loved the third. I feel
Okay.
like if you
The
just
third
gotta
turns
you
me
gotta
right,
make it to the
yeah.
third. Because you're so right, Chris. The action this is insane. What is your favorite fight in the film?
Oh God.
Without spoiling it for Joe.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what stood out to me the most. I'll just say a word. Horse.
Yeah, man.
I'll just say horse.
The raid guys are in this one. They're in this
Yes,
one.
raid guys are in this. Yes, funnily
And
enough.
that might be my favorite fight in the movie. Is with
That
those
might
raid
sell you.
guys with the belt. Oh.
That's pretty good.
Or
the knife.
or
the
the
knife
knife.
fight is great.
The knife,
Knife
fight.
fights.
Oh my god.
The knife
Or
fight's
the
so good.
dogs. Dude, there's so many. There's so many.
There's so many.
Okay.
There's too many.
Okay, yeah. We could do a whole episode just on John Wick in action. So let's put that to the side there. Is there another one you want to shout out?
You, Joey? That's all for me.
I mean,
Okay.
you brought up Matthew Vaughn, and like something I wanted to talk about is, I mean, that first Kingsman movie I'm a huge fan of, and
Yeah.
like, I'm sorry, but that church fight is like one of the most
Oh,
unbelievable
it's-
action
we gotta
sequences
talk
I've
about-
ever
yeah.
seen.
That-
It is
The Wonder.
It's so cool.
That
And
movie
it
made like the action oneer so popular.
It did, and it also introduced like they play Freebird by Leonard Skinner, the big
Yeah.
guitar solo with that fight sequence. And I think because that came out the same year as Guardians, and I think that was the year where movies were like, okay, we need to include pop songs
Yeah.
with our action sequences. Because that is such a good needle drop. And it doesn't really like have anything to do with the story at all, but just something about the energy of that song paired with the fantastic direction of Matthew Vaughn in that church, where we see Colin Firth just take out all these like religious bigots who are controlled by this mind control device, is like, I sometimes will just like whenever I need to like get pumped up, I'll just watch that scene on YouTube, and just it's one of the most energetic fight scenes I've ever seen. Now it is aided a lot by CG, and it's very clear, especially now because that movie is almost 10 years old, believe it or not.
That is crazy.
But
Mm.
still, it's just the energy of that scene and the editing and the choreography of not just the action, but the cinematography as well. It's truly unbelievable. And yeah, Matthew Vaughn, and even in the sequels, like the sequels aren't that good, but the action scenes, the fight sequences still hold up. Like the scene in Kingsman 2, if you remember, where he does at the very beginning, Taron Egerton has the fight in the car to "Let's Go Crazy" by Prince. If you
Oh,
guys remember
yeah.
that scene,
Yeah.
but like Matthew Vaughn still knows how to direct action, even if the movie surrounding it isn't that good. Those
Yeah.
Kingsman movies and the Kick-Ass movies, I know he didn't do the second one. He knows how to do a good fight scene, so I'm glad
yeah.
to shout out Matthew Vaughn because he's one of the best action directors out there.
Absolutely. It really did. That and Guardians, they came out only a few months apart, and they did start like the needle drop action sequence, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good. Okay, those are good shout outs. Okay, one more other shout out. I didn't really want to talk about superhero movies in this episode because I feel like there's so much more to action than superhero movies, you know, even though that's like I feel like that's like the main action flag like subgenre that's come out today. I feel like I wanted to focus more on other ones, but I just want to quickly talk about my favorite superhero action sequence. It's a very controversial one, I feel. I remember it caused a lot of debate when it first came out, but my favorite is still Zod versus Superman and Man of Steel when they're fighting in Metropolis, and everyone's like, oh, why would they fight in the city? They're killing lots of people. I'm like, I don't care. Like, we're finally seeing Superman after 5 movies of Superman just like only saving cats out of trees and stuff like that. Finally being able to see this god like finally cut loose, not a god, he's a man with God's powers, but finally seeing it, like able to see that realized, to see like like what the fight was like in the Death of Superman series, and whenever he would like fight like big opponents like Darkseid and stuff like that, and just like how that would look, the way that Zack Snyder shoots him like punching Zod while he's flying through the air, like the camera's like focused behind the fists and stuff like that, and how he's able to play with that. I just thought it makes the movie so cool and just so unique. It was super unique at the time, we didn't have like I think the big CGI fight fests sort of came after this and the Avengers, but this was a film that I remember like when I saw it when it first came out, because I wasn't really excited for it. I was never a Superman guy, and I was like, oh, they're making him like Batman, like the Dark Knight movies. But then when I saw it, I was like, holy shit, this is like this was like something I've never seen before in like that sort of form, but I think it's sort of this style of superhero action it definitely has lost its touch, I feel. But I just remember like it was so novel when it first came out in 2013, which is like, again, that was literally 10 years ago. That movie's 10 years old, and I still think it looks good, mainly because it does use muted colors, which definitely people can critique that, and it's muted darker colors, but that's able, the coloring and lighting is able to hide some of the creases behind it, so it's a fair complaint in terms of coloring, but I just think it still looks great to this day. But yeah, that's one. I don't know if you guys have anything to say about that. We can get into something more experimental if you want.
Another shout out for a superhero film. Ethan, I know you don't like this one. Chris and I can geek out for a second. But like train fight Spider-Man 2. Come on.
Oh, come on.
One of the
It's so
most
good.
legendary action
well done.
sequences. I mean, it's personally my favorite superhero movie of all time. Like,
Same, yeah.
nothing really tops that one for me. Ethan, I know you're not a big fan of the Raimi
Hey,
ones.
Actually,
he came around to it, actually.
What, you have?
I rewatched Spider-Man 2. I remember right before No Way Home. I was watching them all. And even though I always tried to give Spider-Man 2 other chances before that, and I was like still not clicking with me. I rewatched it right before No Way Home, and I was like, okay, I get it now. I think
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2 is a great film. It is definitely, I think it's my second or third favorite Spider-Man movie. It is, I don't, the visual effects haven't aged well, obviously. It came out, what was it, 2002?
2004.
2004, yeah.
But that train fight is great because I just think it has such a good conclusion.
It's so, oh my god, the fight culminating in Spider-Man, like everybody knows the image of him like holding onto his webs while he's like trying to stop the train, and then that scene where he gets carried by the New Yorkers in the train and they see his face and they see he's just like, that scene, I'm not kidding, makes me tear up. Like, I cry.
Oh,
Yeah.
I and like Doc Ock is just such a like the way they portrayed him in that film made for some fantastic action sequences and some great fights, because part of it was they did it partially practical, which was so cool. It's so cool to see the
yeah,
behind the
that's so
scenes of
cool.
how they did it. But that train scene is just, when you have a villain that could come at you in all these different directions with his arms, and it makes for such a great foe for Spider-Man to fight. So had to shout out Spider-Man 2 because that scene is just forever one of my favorites.
It's a great scene. All right. We're sort of nearing at the end of this podcast. We're just over the 50-minute mark. So let's get into some, I really want to see some really creative picks here.
Oh, yeah.
Chris, you're always the wild card when it comes to these.
Oh, boy.
I want you to kick this off. What do you think is a great cinematic fight? That can be in whatever way you want.
Well, I think the most like the way that I interpreted that is like you can go. I mean, obviously we have the version of the fight that we've been discussing pretty much this entire episode, but one that came to mind is like argument
Yeah.
scenes. Those are fights. People have fights. You know, like oh, I just had a dumb fight with blah blah blah. You know, like there are like conflict is fight. You know what I mean? And especially when I think the moment that conflict turns into a fight is when it gets verbal and it gets aggressive.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, there have been many performances throughout time that have had actors just ball out with their with arguments.
Yeah.
But what comes to mind immediately for me, I think the Leonardo DiCaprio and Margot Robbie argument in Wolf of Wall Street, right before he tries to take the daughter, is so brutal for me to watch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is like it starts off with like just like them talking about like what their situation is regarding their their like the illegal shit that he's been doing in the story, but then it transitions to like them having sex and then her asking for a divorce right after it, and then it transitions into like you're not taking my fucking kids, and then there's like a slap, and then he slaps her, and that's like oh this just got real.
Yeah.
And then like he goes and snorts a line of coke, and just the tears running down Margot's eyes as she yells at him, and he yells at her. Like it's that kind of like the only way I can describe it is like it's the kind of there's a realness to that scene because it feels like the kind of outburst, the authentic kind of outburst you would see in a marriage between two people. Like it feels very real. And then by the time that scene kind of comes to a head and he's taking their daughter into his car and about to leave, like, oh my god! I remember I was at the edge of my seat when I first saw it, and funnily enough, I showed Angelica that movie a little bit ago, and when she was watching it, like I could see like she was like shaking, like scared because of that, and like that movie's a comedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can find these in anywhere. And maybe the comedy even enhances the fact that this fight is so powerful because the juxtaposition between you laughing at them doing dumb shit with drugs 1 second and then this heart wrenching scene with a wife the next, like it's just so impactful. I'm sure that you guys have argument scenes as well that you want to throw in there.
Yeah.
Joey, you got anything you want to throw in?
Yeah. This is one that set the internet ablaze a few years back because it was a big Oscar contender. But Marriage Story, the
Marriage
scene
Story,
between
I was just
Adam
thinking.
Driver and Scarlett Johansson in the apartment, and
Punching
so
them.
many memes
Yeah.
came from that. But if you actually watch that scene, it is one of it's not just yelling for the sake of tension. It's
Right.
you truly feel the like emotions of stress and frustration and anger and regret through these wonderful performances where Adam Driver says like I wish you would fucking die, and like and immediately you see the regret on his face. It is one of the most finely acted and finely directed argument fight film scenes that I've seen recently, and it's just so well handled because the anger and the intensity feels so natural because you understand where these characters are coming from because that movie just drips with empathy for both. It doesn't pick sides at all. And I think and Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson are just oh my gosh, like so phenomenal in that scene. So when you said fight scenes, I'm not gonna lie, that was one of the first scenes that came to mind. Was the scene from Marriage Story. It wasn't even like a big over the top action sequence. It was literally that scene. And part of the reason was someone brought it up to me recently and kind of broke down like why that scene is so great. And I completely agree. I think that scene, like there's a reason it kind of had a chokehold on the internet. Outside of the memes, like I think it's just so memorable and so powerful. So I definitely wanted to shout that one out.
Definitely. One I'm gonna go for is another very you know I don't know if intimate's the right word, intimate argument, but it's between a whole family. I'm gonna be talking about the dinner scene from Hereditary, where
Mm.
I'm not the biggest fan of this movie, but Toni Collette in this
Oh, man.
scene.
So good.
Holy fuck. You know, this scene, it's absolutely my favorite scene in the movie because it's, you know, this is a film just about the horrors of grief and grieving, you know?
Mm.
And I think Ari Aster really plays with that, with this sort of pseudo like witchcraft narrative, but it's mainly about characters dealing with grief, you know, and and responsibility, you know? And you know, you see Alex Wolff and Toni Collette sort of clash in this dinner scene, and I, it's very hyperbolized, but I can tell, I like the anger that these two share in this scene. It's two different kinds of anger that I have seen all too well come from grief, you know, and just how Toni Collette just explodes. I've never seen like an actor explode like that than in this scene.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the scene that I like remember this actress for. It's just intense, you know. It's some of the you know, her words are like daggers, you know, just because how she forms them with her vocal cords. It's such an intense fight, and it's sort of the thing that kicks off the madness that ensues in the rest of the film. Which again, I'm not the warmest on. I think it's a good movie. I just don't think it's as great as everyone was celebrating it to be. I think I prefer Midsummer. I don't know. I'm on and off with Ari Aster, to be honest, but this scene right here is like, that was like just excellent performance and filmmaking, you know. But yeah, that was like the big out of the box one that I had for like a verbal fight, you know.
I really need to give Hereditary another watch. I saw it like back when it came out, and for whatever reason, I was just not a fan. I can't even tell you. It was 5 years ago, so I can't even tell you what I didn't
Yeah,
like
it's been a
about it.
while.
But like, so many people praise it to the point where I'm like, okay, I need to give it another go. Like, I need to watch it again. But I do remember Toni Collette being such a standout in that film, and that scene in particular was. Yeah, like I feel like it's an easy trap for movies to fall into when there is a fight scene that isn't like a physical confrontation, it's a verbal one where it can feel melodramatic and it can feel unnatural because the naive inclination would just be to shout or explode. And I think it takes a very fine actor and really good writing and a good director to do a scene like that where it feels earned and it feels natural. And Toni Collette's she's just a master of her craft. And I think that's like a really good example of a scene where you can get loud, but it feels earned. The moment feels earned. So I need to rewatch that movie. I really do.
I need to rewatch both his movies because I didn't like Midsummer 2 when I first saw it. But the more I think about it, I'm like, okay, wait, that was like, now that I've sort of experienced some of the similar experiences they have in the movie. I didn't beforehand, but you know, now I kind of just want to compare, you know, and see what that's like, you know. Scandinavians are terrifying, by the way. My people, they're scary people, and Ari Aster understands that, which I appreciate. And Salt Lake City is you know, he's really making films that, like, you know, Park City and Salt Lake, it's a scary, weird place, you know, and that's where all the witchcraft and horror comes from in Hereditary. And then my homeland, the Scandinavians, you know, they're no good. But what do you think about Hereditary, Chris? I know you're a big fan.
Yeah, I really enjoy Ari Aster's films. I especially like Midsummer. That movie really rattled me and like made me think about a lot of stuff that you know, that it dives into in its themes and its story. But as far as Hereditary goes, I mean, I think I need a rewatch of this movie, much like you guys, because I feel like now understanding the context of this film as well as like just the overall plot, I wonder if I were like, it's almost like it's kind of like the same pleasure you might get from like, say, rewatching a whodunit movie like Knives Out. You know what I mean? You'll pick up on the little hints of what's going on in the story and whatnot. But as far as like how that, especially that fight scene that argument scene, fight scene, whatever, we were talking about, yeah, I mean, Toni Collette, when she explodes, like I don't know if you guys have ever ran into this, but you ever been having like a friendly what started as like a friendly debate with like your mom or something,
and it just heats up.
And it's like, oh, it just gets real, and then
it happened here on Stacks during the road trip movies.
Oh yeah, it
Right.
heats up, and then just out of nowhere, it happens, and you can't go back from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, like that, like the way she yelled at is it Alex Wolf? Alex
Yeah.
Wolf. The way she yells at him, I'm like, oh man, we've all been we've all gotten scolded like that at least once. You know what I mean?
Or
And
have
it's
seen
like,
someone scolded like that.
yeah, and it's like,
I remember seeing people scold like that in school, and I was just like, I
yeah,
need to leave the room because it's
yeah,
like
no, yeah,
stressing me out
like
too much.
it's the kind of like discomfort where it's like your asshole like clenches and like your toes curl. You know what I mean? I don't know
Ooh,
about you guys. Like I'm just
yeah.
like you get like stiff almost. You know what I mean? Like you just can't move.
But not in that, not
Um,
in the other way.
not in that way. Not in that way.
I feel like one of the most brutal parts of being a part of a confrontation is when you're just like a bystander,
Yeah,
or like
it's
you're
the
just
worst.
stuck and you're just watching two people or three people, but you're not directly involved. Like just go at it, and all you can do is just exist in the same setting. And that I think is arguably just as stressful, if not more stressful, than actually being a part of the confrontation.
Dude, when
Yeah.
when my entire class got like in trouble in school for things that I wasn't even a part of, and I had to
Yeah,
sit
I've
there
been there.
and like
I've heard that.
have
Yeah.
the teachers yell at you even though you didn't do anything wrong, you know, it was some other assholes, you know, and you just have to, you're just like, I can't fucking deal with this, man. Like I can't do this. Oh my god, it happened to me so many times in third grade. I can't even tell you. But yeah, I know that feeling all too well, and this is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, we're just over an hour here. So I kind of want to wrap it up. If you guys have any other honorable mentions that you want to talk about, let's shoot them
Yeah.
out right now.
Would love to throw in just like one last thing. This is my broadest vision of a fight scene. So let me cook something for you guys right now. So recently I rewatched The Dark Knight. I watched it with Angelica, and a fight scene that really stuck with me. I mean, I think a lot of people will immediately jump to the interrogation scene, right? Because that's like the scene from that movie. But in terms of the broader strokes of this movie, I think one of the most impactful fight scenes is actually the final showdown in what's called the Pruitt Building in Gotham at the end with where Joker has his final stand. The reason I think that is such an
Oh,
impactful
yeah.
sequence is that like as a fight, obvious. I mean, okay, let me first say, if there are Dark Knight, I think we all really like this movie. I think I have two big faults with it. One, I don't like Bale's Batman voice.
Yeah.
Two, I think what was it? Fight choreography needs some work. I think the fight choreography could be a bit better.
Hmm.
So, but put that aside, the reason I bring this up for this conversation is that the way that sequence is constructed is so compelling because you are provided just the right information where it's like, okay, you have Batman, you have the GCPD,
Yeah.
and you have Joker, and then you have the two boats and the bombs and all that stuff. They set that up perfectly. But then when Batman goes into the building and discovers that the hostages that Joker has taken and has swapped places with Joker's goons. So now you have a situation where Batman knows something that the GCPD does not.
Right.
And I think in a grander thematic level, I mean, first of all, it makes for great action because you have a goal and you know the stakes. But what makes that scene so much more compelling to me on a greater thematic level is that whole fight is the battle for Gotham's soul.
Yeah.
Joker could win. Like this is the moment that Joker does win. Well, actually, he doesn't win in the end in a way, but he's won by then. But this is the big final fight where we as an audience are invested towards whether or not Joker proves that everyone is as ugly as him and that everyone will stoop to his level of evil given the right circumstances.
Right.
And that's what, and you tie that into like the GCPD like not being in the know on this, and like that can tie into themes of corruption in the police force, which I think The Dark Knight handles really nicely. But yeah, I don't know. I just want to throw that in there because I remember watching that and just kind of being blown away by like all the layers to this fight and like the thematic significance of that sequence.
It's great.
Anyway,
Great
honorable
scene.
mentions.
Okay. I don't think I have any honorable mentions. I talked about every film I want. Do you have any
I have-
honorable mentions?
Well, I have just like two fight scene related things that I just want to throw out. We don't have to dwell on them for too long. One of the directors that's best for depicting arguments, fights, particularly family disputes, is my guy Steven Spielberg. I think
Oh,
his fight scenes in his films, recently there's The Fablemans, but you can also look at Close Encounters.
Oh,
You can look at Lincoln. He has mastered the craft of depicting two characters talking over each other, but you through just really good editing and blocking, you still understand what each character is saying and you see both of their point of views.
yeah.
So just want to shout out my guy Steven Spielberg. Always got to shout him out. Secondly, we started talking about Rocky movies and we didn't really dive too much deep into them.
True.
So many
yeah.
iconic, and it's just because this is fresh in mind for me because I'm going through all the Rocky movies.
Yeah.
So many iconic boxing scenes in those movies, but each Rocky movie also has an iconic disagreement between Rocky and Adrian. And
True.
those scenes are
Because I'm
honestly
scared, okay?
some of the best of the series is the scenes between Sylvester Stallone and Talia Shire because I don't know what it is, but their chemistry is so good and they feel like a real couple, like a real married couple who are having these difficult conversations. So amongst the Rocky movies, I just want to shout out the scenes between Rocky and Adrian because those are just as iconic fight scenes as all the memorable boxing scenes as well.
Yeah. Oh my god. The one in Rocky 4 is pretty good. It was like,
Yeah.
"Because I'm scared, okay? Oh, it's
Yeah.
so good. Also, I want to shout out that I do have an honorable mention. You reminded me. Creed. I think Creed actually has some of the best boxing matches in any of the saga. I mean, the introduction when we're introduced to Creed, as a boxer, it's that Ryan Coogler shoots that oneer where we follow him out of the
Yes.
locker room into that and just we watch the whole match in one take. It's probably not one take, but it looks like it's one take.
It's
Um,
unbelievable.
It's
Yeah.
pretty good. And then also the ending fight where he flashes back, like he's down on the ropes and he flashes back to Rocky, his father, to Apollo Creed, and he gets up and he goes da 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 da.
Yeah,
da,
it's
da,
so
da. You're just
good.
like, holy shit, it's so good. And I am so excited because Michael B. Jordan's been saying that he's basing a lot of the fights off of anime in Creed 3. And people are praising it, so I'm just like, I'm ready to just dig into that. Let me shout out Brandon's, because he wanted me to shout out his picks. Okay, here we go. So, best fights. Everything Everywhere All at Once. Parentheses, numerous. Lots of good fights in that one. Warrior, the final fight. Mission Impossible Fallout, the bathroom scene with Henry Cavill where he cocks back the fist. That's good.
That is a good one.
The Last Jedi in the throne room. It's pretty good, but if you really break down that scene, you can,
there's a
clearly
lot.
see that they don't even touch each other a lot, which is like
it looks cool though. It looks
great.
really
It
cool,
looks
and
really
the
cool.
production design is phenomenal in that scene.
I think the production design carries it, and the cinematography if it going in
Mhm.
slow motion. Creed 2, the final fight, that one's pretty good. Creed 2, it's a good one, Joey. I can't wait for you to see that one. Because it kind of sort of ties back to Rocky 4. It's pretty good.
Okay.
Jackass, the diner fight. No, not Kick-Ass. Sorry, the diner
Yeah.
fight in Kick-Ass. What is that?
when like Kick-Ass is like he's running and trying to save the cat, and then those fuckers trip over him. You know what I mean? And then he's
Oh yeah.
it's basically when he
Oh.
becomes a superhero. For the
I would
first
pick Hit Girl's fight scene.
Dude, I'd pick all of Hit Girl stuff. The
The
hallway scene
first
and the
person-
night vision
yeah.
scene.
What's he doing?
Come on. Yeah, get out
Yeah,
of here.
he should come
Brad.
back and speak his mind. Tell us why. Oh wait, he can't.
Yeah, Brad.
John Wick 3, he picked the knife fight.
I fight, of
uh,
course.
Nobody, he picked the bus fight. That's a good fight.
Oh, the
That's pretty
buzz
good.
fight is.
Buzz fight's
I
good.
wish I brought
It's
that
so
up.
good.
Nobody is. Oh my
Uh,
god. Yeah.
He also shout out Zod vs Superman in Man of Steel. Kill Bill Volume 1, The Bride versus Crazy and Crazy 88. Yeah. Kingsman, he
Kingsman.
shout out The Church as well. This one's good. Snowpiercer in the dark tunnel when they're fighting the guys with the axes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Kind of reminds me of
yeah.
Old Boy as well. You know what I mean?
Old boy. Hot Fuzz, third
Hot
act,
Fuzz.
the big
That whole
shootout.
third
We
act
didn't
was so
talk about any like big shootout fights.
Or like gun battles. Yeah.
No gun fu. I mean, John Wick has that. If I were to shout one out, I'd talk about Once Upon a Time in the West. Oof. The opening scene of that, it's not really action heavy, but it's paced so well, and it's just a simple shootout. Django, the Candyland shootout, RRR, when when Raj takes out 1,000 and the prison break.
In the
There's
beginning,
so
I'm
many
trying
scenes.
to.
Hell, Naatu is arguably a fight scene. He's fighting.
It's a
against
dance battle.
British. It's a dance
Dance battle.
battle.
That's a fight.
That's a fight.
That's a
Naatu
fight.
Naatu's a
Also,
fight. It's an awesome
West Side
fight.
Story.
Yes,
Yeah.
The dance hall. Spielberg's. That's the
Steven
best scene in the
Spielberg.
movie.
I'm
That's the
telling
best scene in
I'm
West Side
telling you,
Story.
this guy knows how to do conflict.
Yeah. And then he shouted out the final battle to Avengers Endgame, which it is good, but it's just a big battle. I don't know. It's a great, satisfying big battle to me, but I'm just like.
But as an individual fight, there's nothing actually that special about the choreography. Or
I would rather say when it's just Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor fighting Thanos in that movie. I think that's a lot better than the final battle. You know?
Yeah.
I feel
He
like
picks up the
battles, it's just too much. I feel like a good fight scene is usually between one, two, or three individuals alone,
Yeah.
where there's somewhat a very clear central person that you're following within a fight, at least one.
Yeah,
and
'cause I
battles,
was-
it's thousands, if not millions.
I was originally going to talk about Return of the King, the final
Hmm.
battle in Return of the King, which I think is the best battle I've ever seen. But it's that's a battle, not a fight. I feel like there's a difference
Yeah.
between a battle and a fight.
There's a
you know?
huge difference, yeah.
But those are his picks. I think to wrap it up, I have a fun idea. Which fight stood out to you guys the most in our discussion? And it has to be one that you didn't pitch. Which movie stood out to you the most? I'll start out with Top Secret. I think I'm dead ass. I think I'm gonna watch that movie this week now because of what you said. I really want to see that now. Top Secret, and then Kung Fu Hustle, just because I forgot it, and I feel bad that I forgot that movie because it's so good. Those are the two that stood out to me the most. But now I just I want to watch them both. What
I
about you
think
guys?
being on the show, more so every time I'm on here, I just end up getting a lot of really good recommendations for stuff I should be watching. So I definitely want to check out Kung Fu Hustle. I think your guys' discussion on that film completely sold me. And I want to rewatch Hereditary just because you talked about that scene with Toni Collette, and now I'm like, I really need to give that movie another go. I really do. I think if I revisited it, I would enjoy it a lot more, and I will get into John Wick eventually. I'll dive in.
Yes. Yes. What about you,
Yeah.
Chris?
Ooh, I think the one that is sticking with me the most. Technically, I didn't pitch this one, so I feel like I'm cheating, but it is Police Story. But if I had to pick one that's completely fresh, I'm gonna throw in. I don't know. I'm also kind of at a loss. I don't know
None of it was good. All right, that's fine. You know,
because we've
All
seen,
your
we've-
picks suck.
I think Kingsman is an important one.
yeah,
Kingsman, the church fight is so good.
that's foundational modern
like-
action right there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
modern. That's modern. Like it or not, that's an important piece of modern action filmmaking.
Absolutely. All right, well,
Yeah.
that's the episode, everybody. You know, I'd like to thank Joey for coming in last minute, literally a day of notice. We were pitching this episode. We were talking with Brandon, and we were like, "All right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do all this." And then Brandon's like, "But there's one thing, I can't talk." And I was like, "Okay, well, and we've already been doing a lot of duo episodes, so I wanted to get a third person so we can have a proper episode." And thank you so much, Joey, for stepping up, for coming in, helping us out, and giving us a great show. This won't be the last you hear of this man. I promise you, dear listeners. Thank you for
It's
coming on
always
the
a
show,
fun
Joey.
time. It's always a fun time. I always love coming on here. Anytime you ask, I'm here. I'm ready to go.
Good to know. Good to know. All right, that'll do us for this episode of Stacked, episode 104. Everybody, thank you so much, so much for listening. And if you want to click a few more, you can click right here to get Stuckmanized.